And we are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn free, civilly disobedient media broadcasting live on the Worldwide Coalition Network here at the GoLocal Live Broadcast Center, deep in the heart of the city we love, Providence, Rhode Island. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, on the mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio, and of course the mothership at coalitionradio.us. If you go to our Facebook page, we have finally entered the 21st century. Yes, we are issuing podcasts. Right now we're on the Spreaker platform at Spreaker.com. A link exists right on our Facebook page. But we hope soon to be on all the big boys. So if it's easier for folks to listen to political conversation via podcast as opposed to, in addition to YouTube, we'll be there, taking it to the streets. Another late start tonight. Why, you might ask? Well, like many Rhode Islanders, I gather my few meager belongings daily and travel north to Massachusetts to do the work that simply Rhode Islanders need to do and Massachusetts people won't do. Any attempt by Gina Raimondo to somehow point out an improved work economy, if you will, for Rhode Islanders can be belayed by simply going to exit 4 on 295 southbound on any given weeknight. The traffic has become nearly insurmountable. Thousands of Rhode Islanders leave Rhode Island every day to get employment in the promised land, Massachusetts. People from all walks of life. People like me who specialize in intermodal distribution vehicle sales. Yeah, I sell big trucks. To folks who are in academia, research, sales, construction. The traffic north begins at this point at about 5 or 5:30 in the morning. Rhode Islanders, again, of all backgrounds, from all over the state of Rhode Island, heading north to the promised land so that they can effectively bring home money to the old country to support their families. Now, we may be close enough where folks can do it in one day in a drive, and folks aren't subjected to the extraordinarily expensive wire fees that a lot of our Central American and Latin American friends have to do to send their money home. But the analogy is apt. Rhode Island as an economy is a failure. And for lack of a better term, the trumped up claims of Governor Gina Raimondo, well, they bear no relationship to reality whatsoever. When one can realize 10, 20 to 30% higher wages in Boston with a variety of career choices, and the effective unemployment rate, essentially being zero. And when I mean zero, obviously it's not. But effectively, the Boston economy is so prolific with jobs that they can really, anyone with some type of work background can be employed up there if they're willing to make the commute, if they're willing to deal with traffic, or if they're willing to deal with the commuter rail system. Compare that to here in Rhode Island, where so much of the job development takes place in the service sector. I will never deny those folks the dignity of their extreme hard work. But as far as opportunity goes, it's clearly in Massachusetts. What has to happen to change that? People talk about a business climate. And when I say people, I'm talking about folks who might be right of center in their politics. Folks who are typically left of center point towards education as what companies look at. They'll point towards quality of life. Well, to that I say balderdash. The key determinant in whether or not a company resides here, and what I'm talking about is larger companies who aren't, say, retail-based, location-based, like they're not restaurants, they're not forms of entertainment, but companies who are effectively engaged in manufacturing. They look to something very simple. On the larger end, they look to the effective tax rate. It just costs a lot more to do business in Rhode Island. And there's nothing in Rhode Island that is so attractive on a business level that the quality of life one enjoys here overcompensates for it. When folks talk about the quality of life here, well, quite frankly, they're talking about higher education. They're talking about our beaches, restaurants, et cetera, et cetera. But I once had an opportunity to ask this question to the late, great Vincent A. Buddy Cianci on his Vincent A. Buddy Cianci radio show. And I asked him, was there anything about in Rhode Island that one couldn't enjoy from a short drive from the comfort of their home in North Attleboro, Sharon, Plainville, Seekonk, Swansea. And after reflecting for a few moments, what seemed almost like an eternity in radio time, he had to say no. Everything great about Rhode Island can be enjoyed from neighboring states who have much more diversified, more robust economies. We're certainly not going to screen people at the door whether or not they can go to the Matutic Oyster House or any one of our number of fine Italian restaurants, or more on Atwells Avenue, or the incredibly eclectic range of restaurants that exists over in the West End, Chalkstone, Broad Street. No, any one of those can be enjoyed with a quick 20-minute, half-hour drive. Where the taxes are lower, the schools are better. And that's the singular tragedy here. How is it possible, as I reflect on tonight's nearly hour-long drive from the greater Walpole area to here, the tragedy is that so many of those people should be living and doing business here in Rhode Island. If one is employed, I would argue that the quality of life in Rhode Island, particularly if one is employed with Boston wages, is possibly one of the best standards of living here in the country. Anything and everything is available to you at a reasonable price and reasonable logistics. We don't have that. We have about that whole dreaded syndrome where rents are skyrocketing, where the cost of living is skyrocketing because of gentrification. Now, to have gentrification occur at a high level, it's occurring somewhat in Providence, particularly on the West End, but to have it occur on a high level requires, well, a working economy. We certainly don't have that. Best soda on the planet. I had the opportunity this week to spend a great deal of time up in Mordor, a.k.a. Halitosis Hall, watching and trying to engage in the debate surrounding legislation. And with great drama, there was near universal support for a bill that allowed campaign finance to include the cost of daycare for candidates. Now, I certainly don't begrudge that. If in fact the ability to use campaign contributions to support, if you will, the ability for a variety of other folks to get involved in the political process, I guess I say okay. I certainly didn't have the fervor that some did, including the bill's sponsor. Because at a certain point, what we've created here is a generation of professional politicians who really are beginning to serve little or no other function. But in the spirit of generosity, let's just assume that. But let's also understand that amongst the range of bills that night, little or nothing was being heard about making Rhode Island more competitive. Little or nothing was heard about making Rhode Island more economically diverse. I happen to embrace diversity. Many of the benefits are here on display in Rhode Island on a daily basis. I'm the guy who believes that we should have more work visas for people to come into this country and work, and I believe that we should have a pathway to citizenship. So don't call me that guy who's xenophobic or racist or biased or bigoted. Nope, not me. But I will tell you this, until the priority of the state of Rhode Island government is either to A, in the most preferable case, just simply begin to go away. They serve no purpose whatsoever. They merely clog up the works for folks who are productive to take over and rise the tide for all Rhode Islanders. But until we make the priority, the singular priority, almost on an emergency basis, Rhode Island to have some type of competitive advantage at some level, somewhere. Not the artificial type where you and I simply write checks for companies, many of whom will fail. Nope, not that. I mean creating an environment where folks of all backgrounds can have a chance at success at all levels. Whether it be the small restaurant started by a first-generation arrival here in the United States, giving them an opportunity perhaps to not be faced with so many obstacles, barriers to entry, costs, and allowing families like that who display the ingenuity, the entrepreneurial attitude that's literally what's great about Rhode Island and great about America. Until we get out of the way of people who actually want to engage in capital investments in Rhode Island. By definition, we penalize people who want to keep capital and invest in Rhode Island. Unless, of course, you're one of those special people who's got that special deal. Like Collect Travel Agency. Because Lord knows they needed a leg up in the marketplace. And that's what's unfortunate. Organizations like that are politically connected will always seemingly get the leg up and the break. In this case, in a thoroughly legal, but I believe immoral concession to a private business at the expense of others. Yep, they got their big job grant because Lord knows they was a suffering. They needed the help. Yeah, they didn't get their stadium, so they're mad. So, again, no sense of urgency, no priorities. The people that I admire the most were up at Halitosis Hall this week, fighting for an open meeting laws modernization. I completely applaud that. It is desperately needed. But again, where was the urgency on all issues economic? This week we were treated to the first trial balloons, if you will, to Gina Raimondo's look at McCoy Stadium post-Pawtucket Red Sox. Conspicuously absent as my good friend, I haven't met him yet, but he's my friend in spirit anyway, Spence Rickert, as he posted, we got all these plans on how we're going to market it. What happened to the millions upon millions of dollars we were supposed to invest in that stadium? Nowhere to be found. Rhode Islanders are cynical because they're lied to so frequently. Challenges, pending disasters, for lack of a better term, are trumped up so frequently that when one is actually presented, our governor is the governor who cried wolf. When most people assume, whether it be the Route 10 connector, whether it be bridges in Cranston, the need for the Pawtucket Red Sox to get a new stadium, is complete fiction. And so the most cynical and abused Rhode Islanders simply shrug their shoulders and carry about their day, content to let the ruling, chattering class lose their collective minds. Who can blame them? They've been lied to so many times. Again, they've divorced themselves from the reality of local politics, ceding, if you will, a tacit resignation from all that matters. Who can blame them? They see folks like myself and some really, really wonderful activists out there, really from both sides of the bench, trying to make Rhode Island a better place. And secretly they scoff and they say there will be no changes. How can we expect change when it's more of, same old, same old, same old? How can we expect any change? It's simply not going to happen. So even when there is the victory, no stadium, they're confronted with the reality of yet another contract to Deloitte. What was that UHIP thing? That was going to be fixed by now, wasn't it? Not so much. And then they look at a government so fiscally, philosophically, and morally bankrupt. They have to extend new forms of gambling and games of chance so that folks can buy in. And they can profit from that type of ill-kept, intellectually bankrupt method of funding a government. There are lines, allegedly, at places where people can bet. Because somehow it has been determined that it's okay now that the state does it, because it's good for the revenue. And that's what we need to worry about, it being good for the revenue. We effectively root against ourselves by rooting for more ways that the state of Rhode Island can intrude into the private markets, intrude into the private sector, intrude into your pocketbooks and wallets, and remove more money. So that that money, that capital, will never go to a private company in the dreaded free market to grow and ordain success as it courses and travels through our economy. It is now a fait accompli that a significant part of the economy will be controlled, screened or filtered through, ultimately, a government prism. Not a prison, a prism, although maybe I meant both. Every time we introduce a new, if you will, hostile government takeover of a market sector, and mark my words, it's never usually described as that. It's just that the Rhode Island government, an institution of failure, finds new ways to absorb itself into the economy. And by doing so, diverts money out of the economy away from a productive working and middle class so that it can generate wealth into ourselves. Hearings have been canceled a couple times, but there's no better example of that than this the concept of a universal pre-K. The same educational experts that brought us arguably one of America's worst performing, lowest performing school systems have now decreed it of critical importance that there be a state-sponsored, state-supported universal pre-kindergarten across Rhode Island. Now, let's editorialize for a second. The first and obvious question that I've got is, this is going to be run by the same Mamalukes, as Ricky Ricardo would say, that brought us the worst performing school system in America? Are you kidding me? Is this a case of people wanting to double down on failure. Let's start the kids down that failed road earlier. We haven't it's not enough that we've ruined their lives at the age of 8, 9, or 10. We can get a jump start on it. A couple of times now I've gone to what was supposed to be an open hearing on this. And a couple of times it's been delayed. Maybe that means, God forbid, that it's in trouble. I'm not sure. They've rescheduled the hearings allegedly for this week. We'll see. And one of the more cynical moves in this year's state government, the governor buried this, allegedly, in the budget. And that's her new MO, by the way. For issues and adventures that have not a prayer in hell of being able to succeed on a standalone basis, they'll bury them in the budget. So let's go down the problems. First of all, with universal pre-K, we simply can't afford it. There is no money. We can't even make our schools safe. By that I mean, ironically, physically. There's just no money. Who's going to pay for it? Sarsaparilla. My friend Lucy called it a sassy sarsaparilla. It is certainly that. So that's the first issue. We simply can't afford it. Perhaps the most important issue is that there's no empirical evidence that any long-term gains in education are achieved by universal pre-K in any areas that really matter. So one has to question, it's just essentially just a way to socialize daycare. I would argue, yeah. The next issue. There are a wide swath of independent free market, yes, there's that dreaded free market again, pre-K providers across the state. I know one or two of them personally. They do amazing work. Question remains whether or not they'll be able to continue to do business under, say, the guise of the state. The state continues to try and centralize what should be a private sector function. There is no reason whatsoever for a state agency to be involved in anything that can't be done by the dreaded private sector. Some will tell you, well, we can hold them to a higher standard. Really? It's just you and me talking. Really? Then explain to me the test scores that came out conveniently right after Gina Raimondo's re-election. Yeah. Balderdash. The notion that this state is in any form ready to engage in yet another generation's education is nonsense. The state of Rhode Island, in terms of its education systems, bear no evidence whatsoever that they are able to, at any level, provide children, young people, babies, with anything approaching an education. They just haven't. 70 plus years of failure. The results speak for themselves. They can no longer hide behind, well, this testing, that testing. The acronym jungle, I call it. No, what they're primarily concerned with is the full employment of expensive, out of touch, predominantly failed industrial education complex. Yep, lots of consultants out there. Lots of people with an opinion. A lot fewer who are in a position with the skill set necessary to actually implement that opinion. So, again, to that I say balderdash. So in summary, there is little or no research out there that supports long-term sustainable gains in education that, at that early of an age, that can't be accomplished and caught up with in our standard educational systems in parts of the country where actually you can expect a level of performance out of said educational system. Number two, we can't afford it. And number three, the state continues to wage economic jihad on folks engaged in the dreaded private sector and enterprises that are now in competition with from the state, whether it be direct state agencies and or organizations that are subsidized. Education belongs in the hands of parents in the local community, primarily in the hands of parents. Parents, children, young adults have a demonstrated capacity to engage in private sector, collective, if you will, forms of education at a very high level. They're called private colleges. The most successful portion of the education industry in this nation are private universities, some of whom I guess this week felt the need to take $500,000 bribes. Wow. But the best part of our educational system, in terms of scores, results, everything, are organizations from the dreaded private sector. They could be private schools. They could be individual parents coming together. Anything. But they're better than what the government offers at every single level. But we've got a whole cadre of educational professionals waiting to double down on failure, and let's get more government-educated people. When will we learn? Seemingly never. Because it's free or buried in the tax rolls, buried in the budget, one of the more cynical forms of mass culture. It's despicable that folks would use public emotion to dictate, shall we say, private behavior. We need a school to be less under the control of state and federal government, not more. And the only people who will profit from the increasing dependence on older children, on federal funding and state funding, is a tragedy. It needs to stop. They need to be in a position of advice, and that's it, in a limited form of advice. And of course, the entire state educational infrastructure needs to be ripped to shreds. Again, let me reiterate. The notion that the failures who run our school systems will have a sudden deathbed conversion to some level of competency when they've got nothing to prove at any level that they can be expected to perform on behalf of our children. Wow. That's all I got to say about that is wow. So, in just a couple minutes, we're going to be bringing on a couple of our guests. At 7:30, Brenda Jacobs is going to be on. She, of course, is with a variety of the alphabet soup that supports your right to bear arms, your right to engage in self-defense. Major rally coming up, just a handful of days. Folks need to get out and support it. Liberty's lost permanently because of the laziness of political leaders, whether they be real, appointed, elected. That needs to end. We need, as a, call it an organization, whatever, we need to rise above the petty concerns of a centrally planned government and make sure we provide an opportunity for free and open debate about gun control. We just do. That needs to be a priority because if we start to chip away at that, everything else is lost. And a subject that is near and dear to my heart, 8:15 tonight. We're going to have a new guest, and we're going to talk about, yes, we're going to talk about civics. I meet young people in politics all the time. All the different sides of the aisle. The left, the right, the center, underneath the aisle, passed out on the aisle. All of them. Barbara Holmes, from what used to be RERA, a conservative Republican organization, is advancing legislation that would make knowledge of civics a requirement. And I applaud that. Not because I'm a sudden fan of the Rhode Island educational system, but ultimately if folks don't know, if they don't have an idea of what their civics are, then how can they responsibly support them as they must? And at the same time, how are we supposed to support when they are failed? When our elected leaders trample all over them? Get back to the open meeting laws that Stephen Brown was so convincingly behind. Who am I to tell folks that they have no right of assembly when in fact they do? They have no right of free speech when in fact they do. They have no right to bear arms when in fact they do. Again, civics is a key underpinning of our society. We ask people newly arrived to the country to have them down cold. And yes, very often they can. Need to do the same thing with regard to all levels of civics interaction. What an open meeting law means, how legislation is developed, breathed light into, and brought before the people's house. A lot of uncomfortable issues in there, but they're legitimate and worthy of our attention and debate. So we will do so here at the Coalition. We're going to take a quick couple-minute break. Brenda Jacobs is going to be joining us. We're going to be talking about this week's up-and-coming monster Second Amendment rally. Folks, we are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting live on the Worldwide Coalition Network here at the GoLocal Live Broadcast Center, deep, deep, deep in the heart of the city we love, Providence, Rhode Island. We had a downpour going on a few minutes ago. Seems to have subsided. Lovely evening. Come down to La Prave. Sample one of the great, great restaurants. Have a few adult beverages and luxuriate in the night. And then, of course, take a lift home to the waiting manse deep in the suburbs. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio. On the Mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio. And of course, coalitionradio.us. As I've mentioned, we've got a couple things going on. First of all, we have established a blog with Spreaker. There's links to it on the Facebook page. The printed link is too long, too many hyphens. But we've already got up last week's shows, and we'll do that again this week. So the plan going forward, individual podcasts at Spreaker. Then we'll have individual broadcasts take place at your adult, if you will. Adult issues are loaded, where folks can come and have an engaging conversation or listen to conversation on issues that actually matter. And of course, the Coalition Talk Radio podcast at Spreaker. So folks, stay tuned. We'll be back in just a couple minutes. Thank you. And we are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting live on the Worldwide Coalition Network here at the GoLocal Live Broadcast Center on a rainy and almost by wintry standards warm Friday evening here in Down City. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, on the mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio, the mothership CoalitionRadio.us, and I'm proud to announce our new podcast page where we're going to be downloading interviews like the one we're about to have in a podcast format to our Spreaker page, ultimately hoping to be soon on with the big boys, where you can easily avail yourself of your podcast software and listen to these conversations in a variety of formats. But let's get right to it. Someone now who is officially on her third time visiting us with us in recent weeks, so she's officially a repeat offender, is in fact Brenda Jacobs. She is with, and I always got to stumble over this, the Rhode Island Revolver and Rifle Association. And she's here to talk.
You got it.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there. But she's here to talk about, again, the continued assault on the Second Amendment here in Rhode Island, your right to bear arms, your right to self-defense. And we're now in at this legislative season, despite it only being really a few short weeks old, we're into about round 6, I think, of what is clearly a full-blown attack on one of our most cherished freedoms. First of all, Brenda, thank you so much for coming back in. We appreciate the kind of boots on the ground reporting that you can do. When last we spoke, there was about to be a legislative session on a variety of bills. What is the outcome of those? Where do things stand on some of the taxes they were talking about? Are they still in committee? Are they going to be part of the? Where are those issues right now? Can you give us a sense?
Well, because they're budget issues, we have no idea where they stand. We had a fabulous showing up at the State House. We had good testimony against the bills or the budget line items. So now we just have to wait because it wasn't brought. Those infringements weren't brought through the normal channels. We've never dealt with them in the budget before. So now we've pled our case, and we're hoping that the Finance Committee will listen to us and hopefully not put those items in the budget. But for us, it's a waiting game.
There's really no way to tell until the sausage shows up and we get to find out exactly what's about to be handed us.
Yep, we're sitting here with everybody else wondering what's going to happen with the fabulous budget.
Well, and here's the concern, because generally speaking, the budget almost always gets passed, doesn't it?
Yeah, at some point, yes.
So there's really the particular evil between putting this in the budget is that, unlike, say, an individual bill where social media and boots-on-the-ground organizations like the Second Amendment Coalition can really rise up, this is buried. And there are, you talk about legislative whack-a-mole. This is what this really is.
Oh, it's very deceitful. And people don't realize when there's law changes in the budget and the budget gets passed, well, now all of those things are turned into law. And I don't think a lot of people understand the whole budget process. Once it's passed, it's law. So, and all of these shenanigans that are going on under the guise of the budget is very scary that we're even being deceived like this.
Right.
And we find this very, very scary and a very slippery slope we're on. If this is going to be the new tactic to get legislation passed, just throw it in the budget, and then it automatically becomes law, and so sad, too bad,
Right. And this is why individuals have to be hyperactive this time around, because in the past, there's been essentially a motivating factor for both sides of the aisle to vote for the budget. Even the Republican minority, and I'm not casting aspersions on anyone tonight, even the Republican minority will have portions of the budget that they want passed. And as a result,
Correct.
there's been a tendency in the past by certain people, other people have been very true, but certain people to look the other way and simply not oppose a budget that may have a key, something that they really want in it. And they're afraid to upset the apple cart because their portion of the budget, an objective that they may have worked on for years in the current legislative environment, will be targeted by legislative powers, and the reaction will be brutal. I have no other polite way to say it. The reaction will be brutal. Swift.
Now the budget has become a tool. It's become a tool in this game that's going on, and it's really disgraceful.
No, I mean, no other way to put it. No other way to put it. So, in the last go-around, we had a number of rather small dollar taxes, per se, I say that loosely, which were really being used to target individual organizations.
Yeah.
Different group fees, membership sales taxes, innocuous sounding, but very effective taxes on ammunition. It became clear that the people being targeted largely by this legislation, although all sorts of groups could fall into it, giving everyone a reason to oppose this stuff. I mean, these budget inclusions really stink. I mean, on a level that is surprising even by Rhode Island standards. But clearly, hunt and gun clubs are being targeted by these people. I mean, just
right.
No doubt about it.
Right, and the thing that people, even if you're not a gun person, the thing that you should have your alarm bells going off, because just because it's the gun clubs this year and the ammo and the firearms this year doesn't mean next year it's not going to be your club. You know, right. your golf club, your country club, your soccer club. You know, this type of legislation is precedent setting. So if this door opens, it's gonna be all bets are off as to who's going to get targeted next year and the year after that and the year after that. And that's why everybody should be concerned about what's happening to us, because you could be next.
Right. No, and you will be next. You've got a government actively using tax policy to engage in social engineering.
Yes.
It's really that simple. And if that sounds like the stuff of paranoia, read the bill. And to your credit and the umbrella that covers your group's credit, you've given people ample opportunity to actually read the bill and understand the facts. And I applaud your effort on that, because clearly individual state legislators at large, not all of them, but at large, are really not interested in going down this rabbit hole. They really would just rather make this go away. And if that means, you know, putting aside some of their own principles, there's a number of them that'll be happy to do that if they can make this go bye-bye. So now...
Yeah, we've actually had people that generally don't agree with us. Even they have come out and said, no, this is really it's downright discrimination at this point is what they're doing. And it's sad to say that, but we even have people that, you know, that are coming up to us that generally are across on the opposite side of this issue saying, no, I don't even feel that this is right. Now, how sad is that?
No, it's just absolute madness. Now, let's flash forward to this. And folks, if you ever look and you see me down on the computer, I have to multitask here, because what I'm trying to do is share this conversation with as many different groups of people as possible, so bear with me. But flash forward to this week, to this Tuesday, and we got something going on again. So give us an idea of what's happening and what the issues are for this Tuesday.
Okay, so this coming Tuesday, at the State House. We're gathering again after 3 o'clock or around 3 o'clock before the rise of the House. The House Judiciary Committee is hearing all of the gun bills. They put all the gun bills out on one night, and they're going to be hearing all of them. And that goes from the ghost guns to the magazine capacity, the assault rifle ban, the gun-free zones. All of these bills are being heard in one night. So we're trying to get as many people up there. Last year we hit 4,000 people. This year we'd like to exceed that and to, get everybody up there to sign in, to testify, and to occupy the House.
And I want to stress, you get an opportunity every 2 years to vote for a legislator, every 4 years to vote for a general officer. Showing up Tuesday night is the only chance you're going to have to effectively vote on this legislation. Now, clearly, you won't have a little buzzer to push, so your name gets printed up in lights. Or in the case of this week, somebody else can push your name, right? So
we've seen that happen before. I was like, wow, it's finally coming out in the public. We've seen that happen so many times, it's crazy.
Right. I mean, I just think what would happen if I got caught punching in for somebody at work. Holy cow.
I know.
That would be less than optimal.
Yes.
So what I mean by your vote, it's pretty simple. Is the color still yellow or is it orange this year?
It's yellow.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll all have yellow T-shirts. We will have T-shirts and buttons available for people up there. And, let's face it, a lot of these legislators, their job up there is to get reelected the next term and the next term and the next term. And this is a night where we can go up there. The reason it's so important to have numbers up there is because they have to understand that we're voters. And when they see a large number of us up there, we're from every single district in the state. And let's face it, some of these elections are only won by a few votes. So, are we the few votes that's going to make you lose your position the next time? Because we're that serious about this. And that's why we can't emphasize enough that we need people up there and standing with us to help us to defeat this.
As the Fonz would say, serious as a heart attack.
Yes.
This is your chance to weigh in. Now, let's reflect for a second on how ludicrous it is to have this many forms of a constitutional issue in testimony in one night.
Right.
That's astonishing to me. I sat up there the other night at, I want to say it was House Judiciary. Some worthy bills were brought up. Stephen Brown was there to advance the Open Meetings Laws bill. Other bills, which I have a difficult time with, legislation up so that candidates for office could use their campaign finance money for child care. I get it, but I have problems with that.
Did you know that last year, let me just give you a little inside information on this one. Did you know that last year, Nellie Gorbia's office, the Moms Demand Action, could use her office for daycare while they were testifying against us at the Judiciary Committee meetings?
Really?
Yeah, they actually put it on Facebook.
So,
how is that? How's that for you?
So,
okay, so we're up there defending our rights, and our own government is providing daycare for the people that are attacking our Second Amendment rights. Does that not blow your mind?
Yikes. Listen, the Secretary of State's office, Ms. Gorbea, whose office, by the way, we deal with the professional staff all the time, and they are very professional. But I was somewhat surprised to see her actively campaigning for a candidate for the General Assembly during the last special election. I get that she can do it. I get that it's not illegal. I just think that the state's general election officer should be involved in elections.
Right.
Just like
I know. Don't you think that's a conflict of interest a little bit?
Well, just like the Attorney General office, the Attorney General, and I'm saying this with almost with a laugh, is supposed to be the chief counsel for the people of Rhode Island. We all know that to be balderdash. Even this newest one has only been in office a few short months and is already disappointing. So I guess we shouldn't be surprised, but at the same time we're appalled. So let's go down some of these briefly, some of these laws that they're going to talk about. Assault rifle ban. All right. How are they defining an assault rifle? I'm curious about that.
Okay, when they say they don't want to take all your guns away, you should read the assault rifle ban, because within their description is where they start getting into all the other firearms when they use words like similar actions, any semi-automatic capable of more than 10 rounds, any. Doesn't have to be an AR-15. It doesn't have to be an AK-47. It can be any semi-automatic firearm that can hold more than 10 rounds. Anything that has a pistol grip that is below the action. Anything that has a bayonet mount. Now you add the bayonet mount. Now you've eliminated all of your antique firearms. I mean, this is where it gets dicey, because people think, oh, it's just the AR-15. Well, no, it's not. When you read the description, it is almost every firearm that's manufactured out there. It's a play on words, and it's dangerous because people don't understand firearms. When they see, oh, it's just the AR-15. Well, no, it's not. Because when you put in these descriptions, it's everything. It's everything. And, and on a whole nother level with all of these bills, if you're not a gun owner, and it's like this, this doesn't pertain to me. Well, it does pertain to you, because some of the bills allow parents to be prosecuted if they believe to have behaved in gross negligence. So it might be gun owners this year. Who's it going to be next year?
And define gross negligence.
Right. And that's the other thing. It's so vague. Their descriptions are so vague. It could be anything.
Right.
It could be anything. And then you get into words like confiscation, forfeiture. Those are other words that you should be very, very concerned about. Because now, you start being able to seize and have to forfeit your personal property that you've paid money for. Okay, so it's our guns this year, but what's it going to be next year? What are they, this is another situation where if you open the door on some of this stuff, it's not going to be limited to just gun people. It's going to be anybody and anybody they want to pick on next, or any other way they want to control you. And that's the very dangerous part of a lot of this legislation, because it's precedent setting, and can be used in other ways, against us. So
right.
Even if you're not a gun person, it's critical that you understand what's happening, because it's opening the door for this to happen to anybody.
Right. And if people don't believe we can reach some pretty extreme positions, one only has to look at the state of Connecticut, where the word confiscation is part of the law enforcement Bible now. And you actually had, my understanding, you had a state Supreme Court dictate that the manufacturer of a firearm can actually be held responsible in a court of law for someone's illegal use of that firearm in a form of violence. That somehow a thoroughly legal product the use of it can now land a manufacturer in a lineup for bankruptcy. It's stunning.
I would hate to be an automobile manufacturer and to see that coming down, because can you imagine? It's the same thing. Someone gets in a car and drives drunk and kills a family. Oh, they drove a Ford. Is Ford now responsible for that death too?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's,
You know, it's that crazy. People don't understand that when stuff like this happens, it becomes law, and then it gets heard and tried, and it becomes a precedent for them to be able to say, well, it worked on them. Let's try it here. Let's try it there. I mean, it's just a very scary situation that we're in, and seeing this happen and seeing that people don't understand the overall impact of it, it's frightening.
right. So that's the first atrocity. If it's summary, Counselor, I can say what you've got is a proposed law where you've got the potential for an ill-defined product, generic terms that can be used by anybody, the use of which can be sued by anybody in every format. Using legal definitions that simply don't exist. They simply don't exist. So, essentially, what we've done with this legislation is we've ginned up fake words with fake terms and created an environment where you've got this broadly written law that can be applied to anyone by politically appointed judges who see fit to use this in their own personal agenda. Am I overstating the case?
Oh, no. Then that's definitely how we see it too, and how everybody should see it.
No, I'm with you. So that's the first law. All right, what else we got on that? So you ran through a quick list, so let's go through a couple more. What else besides banning quote unquote assault weapons that aren't assault weapons law? What else are they going to try and do?
Well, the magazine capacity ban is another one. That for as a woman shooter, I compete, I coach, I teach, and I know that many of my firearms hold more than 10 rounds. So does that mean that now my firearm that's safe and it can hold 15 rounds, but I have to no longer can have that 15-round magazine in it, that's factory manufactured, came with the firearm, and now I can't have that? So now that firearm, if I was to have to get an aftermarket magazine, is that firearm going to be as safe for me to use and handle? It's not going to be, to me, it's a safety issue. I don't have, most of the firearms I have hold more than 10 rounds, to be honest with you. So I don't believe in that. I just don't even see that it's as a deterrent as far as crime goes either, because let's face it, the criminals are not going to change their magazines because now it's against the law. It's just, and that's the problem with a lot of these bills. For one, you have criminals are never going to obey these laws. They're just not. And the other problem that you have, I feel horrible for the woman that was killed in the domestic violence incident. I mean, look at how failed the system was for her. How did the system fail somebody that bad? That person should have never even been out of jail to even harm her. And none of these laws are ever going to prevent that unless we start enforcing the laws that are already on the books. And there are so many of them. If they would just start enforcing the laws that we have, it would help the crime rate.
I'm with you. What's up next? What else we got going on in this, hit parade?
The ghost guns are kind of funny. All of this ghost gun stuff.
Explain to people.
Because if you're a law-abiding citizen, you already know that you cannot manufacture a firearm without it being registered and having the proper markings.
Right.
It's like these laws right here are just assuming that we're going to go out and we're going to be criminals and we're going to make illegal guns, because that's, assuming that that's what we're going to do with them is just crazy.
Right.
They don't understand. They do not understand the engineering behind these to even know what they're talking about.
Right, and it's clear that a lot of the people writing these bills have watched way too much TV, because first of all, with the magazine issues, I think they've seen Sylvester Stallone effortlessly reloading a magazine with another one that he happens to have in his bandolero while he's sitting under the plywood stairs, miraculously avoiding gunshots. And then, then clearly the Rhode Island Revolver and Rifle Association has got an organization somewhere buried in Chepachet, which is taking guns and eliminating serial numbers. I know about it. I've heard about it. And they're using them as a fundraiser. So I had some opening remarks today because we had some extra time at the beginning of the show. Surrounded by all of this, Brenda, is the fact that we've got an economy in shambles here in Rhode Island. And rather than address the difficult, challenging issues of the day, again, we've got a legislature that's hell-bent in engaging on social engineering. It's freaking nuts. Give me one more. Give me another hit. Well,
okay, so the other one is with the regard to raising the age of minors from 16 to 18. Kind of ironic. We want them to vote at 16, but now we don't want them to be responsible enough to have firearms until they're 18.
Right.
The problem we have with this bill is it says that these minors need to always be accompanied by an adult, or a parent, or a qualified adult who is permitted. So that language again, it's so vague. What do they consider a qualified adult? What do you mean permitted? Are we going to have to get permitted to teach these kids now? I'm a rifle coach. Am I qualified, or do I need to be permitted? Like the language in that is very vague.
Right.
And then the other one that's concerning is the no firearms in vehicles. Okay, and now so you can have it at your place of business, you can have it on your personal land or dwelling, but you can't have it in your vehicle. So explain to me how you purchase a firearm and drive it home.
I've got this mental image of thousands of Rhode Islanders on their bicycles and their horses, the cavalry, if you will, going back to the hills of North Smithfield, or bringing their ponies back to Pawtucket. All right.
Right. And now that also does not limit. It's not just for pistols. It's also for rifles and shotguns.
Oh, good.
Again, yeah, so it's all of them. It does not say slingshot, though. I didn't see slingshot yet.
All right, so
but but there again, your language, the language on all of these bills is always so vague that it really makes everything a gray area, and so you don't know. It's all subject to interpretation, and that's scary.
Wow.
And then the other minor bill is that, the one where you have to lock your firearms up in the house, regardless of how you know your house. Parents will be prosecuted and be charged as if they behaved in a grossly negligent manner.
Wow.
So there again, language.
Wow.
So a lot, and that's the same problem we have with a lot of these bills. They just try and make such an umbrella over every issue that that you don't know how it's going to be interpreted. We know why they want to interpret it that way. The 300 feet of a school grounds. Remember that's a gun-free zone bill, which now doesn't just say school, it says school grounds. So you can't be within 300 feet of school grounds. So that means, what about the people who live within 300 feet of a school?
Right.
What are you going to do with those people? Do they have to move? Am I in trouble if I drive by a school?
Speaks for itself.
So these are some of the things that we are up against on Tuesday. And like I said, we need all hands on deck up there, whether you're a firearm owner or not. These bills really affect everyone because they're precedent setting, especially when it comes to the forfeiture of property. That's a huge one.
No, and again, every one of them is dreadful.
Yes.
If we didn't have a judiciary that was so severely compromised in this state, so many of them could be challenged.
Yeah.
The way they're written is either embarrassingly poorly or intentionally focused on social engineering.
Right.
And yet, what we've got in one night is literally an assault on one of our most fundamental constitutional protections. All in one night at a theater near you.
Yep.
And you'll forgive my cynicism, but why is it that the Rhode Island State House is like a freaking game show? Except in our case, there's always parting gifts, and every Rhode Island citizen always goes home a loser.
Yep.
Wow.
I agree.
So,
But, well, we're going to try, we're going to come out in force on Tuesday, and we hope that, we can have more people up there with us and helping us out up there, because it really does affect all of our rights on every level.
So,
And
I want to stress now, if I understand the way you've got it planned, folks are going to meet in the rotunda. They're going to be attired. You've got T-shirts available.
Yep, we wear yellow T-shirts, and
Right.
we will have T-shirts available. People, if you want to testify, you can testify. If you don't want to testify, we just go up there and we occupy the house. And if you want, you can bring written testimony. If you bring written testimony, they want 23 copies. You can, and we will have sheets, because I have to say that the House Judiciary runs very efficiently when we're up there, so they usually have forms ready for us to sign up on, so that people can voice their opinion by bill and say whether they're opposed or in favor. Mm-hmm. So even if you work late and you can just stop by and sign those papers to voice your opinion, that would be fantastic too, because it will be a long night. Don't think that just because we're starting at 3 o'clock that, I'm still working. We encourage everybody to stop by. The parking gets way better after 5 o'clock anyways.
Yeah.
So we are always there to greet you when you come, so that if you have any questions, we usually have copies of the bills so that you can read them for yourself. So we've been getting more and more organized, and we're very helpful when it comes to first-time people coming up. We help direct them to where to go, where they can sit, where they can watch the hearings, and the whole process as to how to sign in so that you get your voice heard.
And the important thing is, unlike in past years, I think the model that you've adopted is very effective. In past years, there were attempts to have rallies outside. The logistics were daunting. You were challenged in a lot of ways from a variety of political elements. Now, all we're asking folks to do is bring their brightest gold shirt. You've got some there. Show up to the house. Occupy the rotunda peacefully, respectfully, which has always been the hallmark of your organization. Be ready to engage in a polite, but aggressive, fact-based debate with people who might be there in opposition. But at the same time, you're there to either testify if it's your choice, submit written testimony, or just as importantly, make sure you say hi or wave to your state representative or a handful of others that might be there, and let them know that the Second Amendment Coalition, the Rhode Island Revolver and Rifle Association, and any one of a number of organizations under that umbrella are watching, ever vigilant, respecting, celebrating, and ultimately responsibly supporting your fundamental right, your God-given right by birth, your Rhode Island and federally constitutional right to engage in self-defense, to bear arms, and ultimately own arms, if necessary, to fight, to challenge, and if necessary, overthrow a government that would seek to abridge those rights. That's why there's a Second Amendment. And as much as we respect sports shooters and their rights in being able to engage in that, Ultimately, the Second Amendment exists as a birthright, number one, to engage in your own self-defense, and number two, to have the capacity to take control of a government out of control. And that's why all of this is critical. Lose this right, and all your other rights, your right to protection against illegal search and seizure, your First Amendment right of speech, all of those begin to be chipped away at even a more aggressive rate. And you can't go along to get along anymore. They will mistake our kindness for weakness. That's never been more clear. And Brenda, again, I applaud your organization and ever vigilant. You folks are ever vigilant. So God bless you.
Well, if you guys want to read any of the bills,
yep,
they're all on our website, RIRRAI.org, or just Google Rhode Island Revolver, and we do have all the bills listed, and you can link right to them and read every single one of them. So if you want more information for yourself to get familiar with these bills, by all means, visit our website and check them out.
All right, will do. And yeah, and message me that link so I can share that everywhere. Okay?
Okay. All right.
Listen, Brenda Jacob, again, Second Amendment warrior. Single-handedly with her group, with her minions, with her associates, with her cadre, if you will, all right, out there supporting your rights. Folks, it's not good enough, as wonderful as these organizations are, as hardworking as they are, it's no longer fair to expect them to carry your water. All we're asking folks to do is take a couple hours out of their day. Folks, I don't own a gun. I haven't shot a gun in 40 years. Doesn't mean that I don't respect your rights to own one as a free person. And it doesn't mean that I won't be out there that night. I'm usually one of the last to testify, but I'm going to be testifying on behalf of the Libertarian Party of Rhode Island in support of groups like Rhode Island Revolver, effectively organizing to put this to an end, to protect your rights. So folks, it isn't good enough to complain anymore. It isn't good enough to let everyone else carry your water. We all, whether we shoot or not, have a vested interest in being out there Tuesday night. And I hope to see all of you out there. Brenda, thank you so very, very much.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Let me talk.
Well, no, you know what? We're going to make this a regular thing. You know, I'd love to have you on, you know, every month or so, or when issues arise. And by the way, go to any State House hearing, and you're going to see a couple of folks, even in the most benign, quiet Thursday evenings, when only a few organizations will be in session, you'll see some people roaming the halls, as we lovingly refer to it in Mordor, with the yellow shirts on, again, ever vigilant. And believe me when I tell you that the Rhode Island legislature knows about you guys. They're watching. They know that you're watching. And a whole lot of shenanigans have been prevented because you folks are ever vigilant. So, again, congratulations on your effort, and I look forward to seeing all of you there Tuesday night. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, have a great night. Folks, we're going to take a very quick break. We're going to have a 5 or 10 minute conversation with an attorney who, again, we're talking to one of our favorite folks, the volunteer attorneys for the American Civil Liberties Union. Then we've got a first-timer here. Someone here at the Coalition visiting us took the time to come in studio, and she's going to talk, Ms. Holmes is going to talk about civics. An issue near and dear to my heart is the absence, and it kills me, the absence of civics in today's secondary education. We have an entire generation who've grown up not understanding their rights or responsibilities as free men and women. And the result, I believe, has been catastrophic. We have an entire generation of the Utes clamoring for rights that simply don't exist, and frankly not aware of the rights that are slipping through their hands and escaping. Not aware of what the true underpinning, for example, of the Second Amendment is, and not aware of the historical birthright that your right to bear arms represents. So how can we expect them to be effective citizens, regardless of which side of the aisle they may choose what happened. And I always have a little funny feeling that some of their choices might be different if, again, they had a fundamental understanding of their rights and their responsibilities as American citizens. Folks, we are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting live on the worldwide Coalition Media Network here at the GoLocal Live Broadcast Center, deep in the heart of the city we love, Providence, Rhode Island. The naked city, the city of 1,000 stories. We're telling a few of them tonight. They're compelling, a little bit in your face, and we have, through the miracle of a 3-hour uninterrupted by commercial show, the ability to engage with these issues in a manner simply not available on conventional media. In some cases, even if they wanted to. A quick shout out to our sponsors tonight. Of course, Yacht Club Bottling, Yacht Club Soda, Rhode Island's boutique soda. Before we needed boutique soda. 100 plus years old, bottled in their facility in Centerdale, aka North Providence, Rhode Island. Crystal clear water, corn syrups free, fructose free, using real cane sugar and real natural flavors. Folks, there's ginger in that ginger ale. I've never tried to figure out what's really in root beer, but there's roots, I think. Real cola, real taste. If you're old enough like I am, it's soda the way it's supposed to taste. As we always say, now we're approaching some of the most solemn religious holidays of the year. St. Patrick's Day. Not just kidding. Folks, you're going to spend an enormous amount of time, money, effort, again, as we always say, preparing the finest meals for your family and friends. Don't resort to the refinery soda. Drink Yacht Club Bottling Works. Of course, Air Sciences, mold remediation, biohazard prevention, ensuring the safety of your school, your workplace, your home. AirSciences.net, owner Daryl Gould and his hardy crew have a variety of services available at little or no cost to folks who with compromised immune systems. Go to the website and ask. And of course, Beacon Shipping and Logistics. BeaconShippingAndLogistics.com, 1-855-3-SHIP-IT. Imagine a automobile shipper with international reach based right here in little Warwick, Rhode Island. Take advantage of all the features available to folks in the automobile industry worldwide, whether it be that car that you bought off of eBay. Maybe Aunt Nellie's got a car that she can't drive anymore, and you wanted to get it to your daughter out at USC. You know, the University of Southern Carolina, because your kid actually got in, got really accepted, wasn't on the crew team. Yeah, okay, that. 1-855-3-SHIP-IT. Folks, these folks have been with us since the very beginning. Without them, the coalition simply would not exist. So folks, take a moment, stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we're back. We are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting here in Providence, Rhode Island. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, on the Mighty Mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio, and of course, CoalitionRadio.us. Throughout the history of the show, and incredibly enough, we're approaching, I believe, something like our 5th anniversary, we've regarded 2 different categories of folks as our heroes. First of all, heroes of civil disobedience. If you get arrested for supporting the First, Second, Fourth, Fifth Amendment, you've got an open invitation to the show. You don't even got to call. Just knock on the window, wave, and we'll bring you right on. I believe in civil disobedience. I believe civil disobedience drives a free society. If it inconveniences government, oh well, too bad. Throughout our American history, we have achieved great gains in liberty or regained lost liberties because of individuals' willingness to buck the status quo, challenge the system, often at great personal risk. At the same time, we have what we call our heroes of civil liberties. And first and foremost among that is the American Civil Liberties Union. Stephen Brown, Executive Director of the Rhode Island Civil Liberties Union, has been on this show many, many times from its earliest days. In fact, from time to time, we replay from our earliest days on WPRO, we call the Coalition 1.0, an hour-long interview myself and time Dave Fisher had with Stephen Brown. Talked about the history, the challenges, and the surprising support despite people's beliefs that the ACLU has shown from people from, well, every which side of the aisle. A key component of that, and folks, excuse my voice tonight, it's a little rough, but a key component of that is the presence of volunteer lawyers, who work often pro bono, long hours, with little expectation of personal gain, to some of the challenges facing the legal system every day. Excuse me. When they win, and sometimes even when they lose, we like to have them appear on the show for a few minutes. And our next guest is someone that I hope has an opportunity in the near future to come in studio. We often find out about these victories on Thursday nights and Friday mornings. It's just the way the judicial cycle seems to work. And I hope I pronounce her name right. I've been I'm struggling with this all day. I don't know why, but it's Attorney Sonia DeVoe. Did I get it right?
It's Dio.
Dio, I'm sorry. Oh my God.
Okay.
But Attorney Sonia Dio was intimately involved in litigation revolving around, well, something as fundamental as our prison system and heat. Think about that for a moment. In the year 2019, we would incarcerate people, some legitimately, some, I believe, is a reflection of social engineering or current laws that I won't support. And yet at the same time, we will subject them to some pretty challenging circumstances. Attorney, tell us a little bit about the case. Well, first of all, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your practice.
Sure. I'm Sonia Dio. I have a employment law practice in Providence, Rhode Island. Been doing that for the last 5 or so years at that location, and I've worked in this field for many years before that. Mm-hmm. With respect to this particular litigation, we received a phone call and then numerous letters from inmates who were being housed at the intake facility. And it became clear to us very quickly that they were all complaining about the same thing, which was the lack of heat. The cases pretty well say that there has to be certain basic minimums that are provided by the state to inmates. It keeps shelter, food, heat, water, things like that. And in this instance, we verified that there were in fact problems, and filed litigation. We're able to receive monitoring reports of the temperatures at that particular area that verified that indeed the condition had been fixed, and dismissed out the suit.
How is it possible, again, in the year 2019, in a country like the United States, which in its foreign policy will, well, we used to anyway, take great pains to make sure that even prisoners guilty of the most heinous crimes were treated fairly in hospitable, livable conditions. So how is it that this could go on? And I'm convinced, my editorialization here, that without your intervention, would have continued to go on. How did this all come to happen?
Well, in this instance, the intake facility over at the ACI was built, I'm going to take a guess, in 1991. And this particular area, the heating system had not been rehabilitated or replaced since that time. In this instance, what they were telling us was that they're in the process of finally putting a contract out to bid to fix those issues. But in the in-between, the system was failing because they couldn't get parts. That's what we were told. And, it's a little ridiculous. We put people in prison at the cost of something like $40,000 a year, and we can't keep a heating system working. Seems a little ridiculous.
And given what we spend as a government here on things like the JCLS, the Joint Committee on Legislative Services, in order to keep Smith Hill, let's just say, as someone I admire a lot, Rudy Cheeks, would used to say, in Pernod and shrimp cocktails. How bad are the facilities over there? What sense are you getting? Are they livable? Are they up to snuff? Are they something you would associate in a first world nation, in a free society?
Well, I think that our prison systems are quite different than those that might exist overseas. And our way of imprisonment is much harsher than what you would get elsewhere. That said, our facilities in Rhode Island are deficient in many ways, and that's reflected in the budget and the things that are being asked for. In part right now, they are doing a major rehab at the intake, and they're also doing a major rehab over at high security.
But what should the expectation be, in your mind, in the case of the American Civil Liberties Union? And you nailed me. I was trying to be facetious. Given my cold, I probably wasn't doing a good job. But what should the expectations be for someone who's incarcerated here in Rhode Island?
Well, boy, that's a hard policy thing for me to say. What I can say is this: there are basic things inmates should have access to. Really, heat, shelter, food, water should be without thought. Those things should be of good quality and sustainable. Beyond that, they should be entitled to access to law libraries. They should be entitled to have reasonable visitation with people, commissary and the like. I mean, very traditional things that inmates have. I don't think anybody that I'm aware of is suggesting that prison should be, a walk in the park and a wonderful experience, but it should be aligned at attempting to rehabilitate people and allow them to come back into society in a productive manner. And many times it's not set up that way right now.
Fair enough. And again, congratulations on bringing it to a relatively quick close, and again, bringing standards up so that they're, in fact, livable for people. Are you working on anything else, or do you have any other past experiences as an ACLU lawyer? It strikes me that there's
geez.
You folks are all over the place sometimes. Pretty tough work.
I've had a lot of work with the ACLU on the civil death bill and the civil death issue.
Right.
Rhode Island is the only state in the union right now that has a statute that holds that those individuals that have been sentenced to life in prison are civilly dead, which means they can't access the court system, at least the state court system, and are basically stripped of any rights to property, marriage, religion, you name it. They would have no action if they were attacked and injured by a guard, at least under state law because of that statute. So we're working on that issue, and we continue to work that issue up.
Well, that's why we'd love to have you on the show again. That's something that I'd love to explore with you, because
Sure.
because so many of the issues, whether it be good time laws, something as straightforward as having heat in the dead of winter, or perhaps something that's a little bit more challenging, subtle, like an issue you just described, requires constant examination, and that is ultimately the purpose of one of many of the American Civil Liberties Union, and that's why Rhode Islanders, and I was, as I mentioned earlier in the show, I've been up at the State House 3 times in the last week. Stephen Brown was there before I was, and very often he left after I did. So the folks in the organization that you support are out there literally every night working on behalf of Rhode Islanders, regardless of their political orientation and regardless of whom they support or even their personal belief system. They're there to support the Constitution, and they're there to support basic civil liberties. So again, I heartfelt congratulations for what you've accomplished, and people like Lynn Labinger and any one of the dozens of attorneys we've spoken to. And again, thank you for coming on a Friday night after, I'm sure, a long week, and I hope to get you here in studio in the coming weeks.
No problem.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Hey, have a wonderful night.
You too.
Wow. Wow. So there's an individual clearly committed to the rule of law, regardless of how unpopular or popular it is. So we're going to take a very quick break right now, and then we're going to get in someone who's been kind enough to come into studio. Ms. Barbara Holmes issued a press release today. That's how we became familiar with the subject. That her organization is working to, in a large sense, if I get this correct, reincorporate civics into the lives of our youth. And as I said earlier in the run-up to this, I can think of few more important subjects societally than having folks understand, well, quite frankly, their rights and their responsibilities. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Yes, and we're back. We are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting live on the worldwide Coalition Media Network here at the GoLocal Live Broadcast Center. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, on the Mighty Mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio, and CoalitionRadio.us. You'll also see links there to our new podcast page. This show will be broken up in a matter of minutes, right, Joe? To provide you with a podcast experience on all four guests that we had this evening. I want to get right to it because she was kind enough to come into studio, and we're running a few minutes late. Barbara Holmes is joining us tonight. She is with an organization that I used to refer to as RERA, and now has evolved into being a local political group supporting conservative Republicans, in acting as really a support network for folks who might be more right of center. Folks know that I'm a libertarian, so her and I are going to agree on a lot of issues. We might disagree on a few, but ultimately what I found fascinating was a press release that I got talking about civics. So I'm going to turn it right over to you because my voice is atrocious right now. But tell us, first of all, about yourself professionally, and then how you became involved in the Liberty Movement, and what spoke to you about the failure, the absence of our civics training here in Rhode Island.
I'm Barbara Holmes. I chair the Rhode Island Conservative Republican Caucus. Actually, it's Republican Conservative Caucus. I'm a CPA. I have a firm in Barrington, Rhode Island, and so I'm used to being up really, really late on this time of year. So the time frame is nothing. This is early, actually. I found out I was part of RERA, the treasurer actually, for quite a few years, and I found out that mandatory civics graduation had been taken out of the public school requirement in the 70s, and I was shocked. That's potentially 2 generations of citizens of Rhode Island that have no idea of how the government is run. Mm-hmm. And so I decided to try to do something about that. Because of being so upset about the fact that it was taken out, I kind of became known around Barrington as the one who was pushing for civics education. So a man named Mike Trophy was looking for a judge for the We the People contest, and I was recommended. Now, I'm not an attorney, and I'm not a social studies or government studies teacher, so I didn't feel adequate at all for being a judge, but they assured me that it would be fine, and so I joined, and I love it. And I found out about the organization and found out that we probably better make some legislation to deal with this issue. So in 2016 or so, I found a piece of legislation that would require civics, passing civics, to be a requirement for graduating from high school. And so I had now, met some senators and some representatives, and I asked them to introduce it. So it was introduced in 2017 and immediately held in committee until this day. So I thought, well, maybe that's not the way to go. But I started doing some more research and found out that Rhode Island has standards for civics education K through 12. So the curriculum people of the state are willing to have some sort of civics education in the public school system, but someone has blocked it or thought it wasn't a good idea. I love to study history and found out that one of the things that the Founding Fathers said was that we have to be a citizenry that's informed in order to retain a republic. Now, obviously, if probably two generations of Rhode Islanders have not learned how civics and the government works, then we do not have an informed population. So I've, again, gotten a hold of some state reps and state senators, and again gave them the bill. As a matter of fact, the bill that was introduced in 17, and we'll see what happens this time. I really believe that if most of the citizens of Rhode Island knew that their children were learning nothing concerning civics, they would be pretty upset about that. As a matter of fact, there's a group of teenagers that have decided that they were not adequately trained to be good citizens, and they're suing the state and the governor. I think that's pretty telling.
No, absolutely. Do you find it ironic that this particular generation of young people, which I'll define loosely as being in college and then later high school, is amongst the most political in recent years, yet is seemingly so, and I say this with love and affection, because I'm not one of these people who beats up on kids. If the kids have issues, very often it's the responsibility of the parents who raise them. But do you find irony there that these kids are so overtly political? You've got this grassroots following for Bernie Sanders, yet I would think, and I've seen this firsthand, that these people a lot of them don't even understand that we do not live in a democracy.
Right.
We live in a republic. I mean,
in a republic, that's right. That's right. That's interesting. It's like the founding fathers thought a democracy would just absolutely be repulsive. It wouldn't work, and it would be actually tyranny eventually. And well, if you aren't taught what our Constitution is about, how our government works, and know the difference between socialism and a republic, and somebody was constantly pushing down your throat the fact that socialism is going to make everybody equal and everybody will have whatever they need. And Margaret Thatcher kind of summed it up really well, I thought. She said, you know, the problem with socialism is eventually you run out of other people's money. And that's true. And I'm part of a national kind of think tank for a kind of a more biblically based economic system. And we had a roundtable a few years ago in Florida, and we kind of had a joke that we were passing around, is that the government doesn't have any chickens to divide. It doesn't produce anything. The only place that government is going to get money is from the people by taxation. And so they're not realizing that these people that they think are so incredibly wealthy do not have enough money individually or collectively to run the nation for a very small time. And so they think that the government is going to somehow produce this money out of. My father used to tell me, you know, money doesn't grow on trees.
Right.
I was disappointed. I thought that would be a great idea, but I learned more about government, and I thought, no.
Well, I mean, and again, you get to some of the basic structures. First of all, folks need to understand that taxation occurs through the use of coercion. You don't voluntarily pay taxes. I'm a libertarian, so, you know, we look askance at that. Folks don't understand that the ultimate minority is the individual, and that mob rule in the form of a democracy is contemptible. With the socialism challenge, what I find fascinating, and this is a recent thing to me, maybe it's anecdotal in nature, I'm running into a lot of older teenagers and young 20-somethings whose parents came over here as a result of the Soviet breakdown.
Yes.
So you've got first-generation Americans who are Romanian. And when you think of Romanians as a sort of charming country, it was amongst the most brutal dictatorships in recent world history. You know, eclipsed maybe only by North Korea. The Ceausescus were just quite frankly, made the Russians, as you and I would think about the Russians, the Soviets, I should say, as Chamber of Commerce types. I mean, these were brutally repressive organizations that literally stole from people in order to create a false sense of equality, while at the same time promoting artificial societies within societies to reward people in government. And just brutal regimes at every level. And yet now you've got a generation, I mean, what do you think of this generation that is lionizing socialism? What do you say to them?
Well, I think the first thing is to explain what it is, and how is it going to work? It's never worked in history.
There's that.
Yeah, You know what I love to tell young people that, you know, when the Pilgrims came and they came to this vast place and they had, you know, can you imagine from sea to shining sea, you know, everything is kind of almost up for grabs, and they were forced into socialism for the first 7 years.
Right.
Result, half of them died. That's and then there was another time in Massachusetts history that again it was tried and it just doesn't work. The big hue and cry was, if your next meal is not dependent upon your working and you're bringing in what you need to provide for that meal, and everybody's going to get an equal amount no matter what kind of output they're giving as far as energy and time, and everybody's going to get the same, pretty soon everybody defaults. You know, I kind of like to say people and electricity and water flow to the path of least resistance. If I don't have to, why should I? You know, it's like I can stay here and rest and whatever, walking back and forth or something, and I'll still have what I need. Well, after a while, everybody isn't working and everybody isn't trying. And pretty soon there's no crop and there's no food, and then you have starvation because people, that's why these brutal regimes come in. You know, it's like, what do you mean you're not working? Because I'm going to get most of the profit from what you're doing. So get out there and work. And then pretty soon there's whips that are being forced on their backs or whatever to keep them going, just like you would do to an animal or a horse.
Was there any one moment in time that the Rhode Island Department of Education or any individual school system documented why they stopped teaching civics?
I don't know. I don't know. I just found out that it happened, and I actually raised most of my kids in private schools, so they did learn some civics, which I'm very thankful for at this point. And so I don't really know the answer to that.
Right. It just magically, is it by accident? I mean, I'll say, you know, this is more of an editorial note from me. The conspiracy theorist in me, which usually isn't that pronounced, isn't surprised that a school system like Providence would shy away from civics. Again, an informed electorate who knows where to shine the light and how to shine the light and understands what their rights are, reacts very differently.
I agree with you. I have to stop trying. I have to push down my conspiracy theorist being as well, because if you were planning to take this country, or let's just talk about Rhode Island, into a more socialistic kind of paradigm, you would have to take away a lot of knowledge from the people, because people aren't going to willingly go into slavery if they know there's something else that's available.
Well, and I was up at the State House the other night when the ACLU is sponsoring a revision, if you will, to modernize, if you will, the open meetings laws. And you know, open meetings are the linchpin of a responsible government. And there's so many ways that Rhode Island discourages opening meetings. You know, if anyone's ever been up to the State House to testify, you'll understand that half of the rooms don't even have access to any sort of modern communications equipment.
Right.
So meetings are not recorded. I happened to be at the last Senate Finance Committee meeting that voted to approve the Pawtucket Red Sox baseball stadium subsidy. You know, the one that ended up dying anyway, thank God. But none of that was televised. I mean, the state was looking at a $100+ million commitment in a very controversial environment, and hardly anyone knew when the meeting was.
Wow.
There was hardly anyone there. I pretty much lived at the State House at that point. And again, you know, it's reflected now, the cynicism that has built out of the electorate from not knowing what's going on is an assumption that they don't have the right to know what's going on. And that results in very low turnout rates. We had a special election in District 68 just a few weeks ago, and an astonishingly small amount of the electorate showed up to vote, despite the fact that the prior inhabitant was thrown out of office before he even got the chance to be sworn in. In a turnaround that even by Rhode Island standards is sort of astonishing. You know, Lofton Longo, his real name, never even got sworn. He only got one picture. There's one picture of him in the State House. And, you know, through a variety of machinations, he ended up getting thrown out, what do they call it, hoisted on his own petard. And yet hardly, despite the outrage of that, hardly anybody showed up for the special election. That the state, because of Democratic Party intransigence, was forced to pay for. You know, the state pays for all these things, so effectively we pay for all these things. In terms of civil liberties, what would you envision the ideal course, and at what age do you think, based on your experience and your research, should it be taught at? When will it be most compelling and interesting?
As far as a course necessary for graduation at the high school level.
Right.
However, it's very telling that our standards in our state start with kindergarten. To be a good citizen, the training needs to start right away. And I would think even at home before, and I really believe the responsibility of all education vests with the parents and with,
yes,
and with the individual. Don't get me off into that.
No, that's fine. You're in friendly territory there.
But it's telling that the standards have K through 12. I think that's something, and I've spoken to some people that, you know, were preschool and kindergarten teachers that were very, very focused on getting a kind of civics or governmental kind of environment in their class to train. And I think to get back to your question about, so when did they take it out? I think if you have an overall plan to basically change the government that we are operating under, a constitutional republic, then if people have, oh my goodness, you know, something is unconstitutional, and that's kind of close to the unpardonable sin, and how can they do that? Well, if most of the citizenry have no clue what the Constitution says or what rights and liberties it gives, then they can say anything is unconstitutional. Well, you don't have the right to walk down that street right now. That's not up. You can't do that. And it was pretty evident in the debates in the last election, where, you know, I saw some candidates that were, oh, that's, you know, unconstitutional, and what they were proposing was what was unconstitutional.
Right. Right.
And so if you want to control someone, it's very easy to control them if you keep them incredibly ignorant of what the rules are that we're established under, and then you're getting to your meetings rules. So then, because nobody's going to realize that they have any authority or that they have any say, no one's going to show up.
Right.
And no one's going to think, well, if I have a voice, and that voice matters, then you're able to change the whole governmental structure, and nobody knows, and quite frankly doesn't care. And I think finally we have seen some major segments of the population are saying, whoa, wait a minute, not on my watch. There's something that I can do. I'm going to make my voice heard. And we're seeing that where more people are getting engaged and saying, no, that's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. And what are you trying to do in our state? And saying, you know what? I've never done this before. I've never gone to the State House. I've never, whatever, you know, for whatever reason, didn't think they were supposed to, or wasn't all that important. And now they're saying, whoa, this is getting really bad. And why? Well, because I didn't say anything, or I didn't do anything, or I didn't encourage other people to do the same.
Witness the conversation you probably overheard about Tuesday night at the General Assembly with the Second Amendment debates that are coming up. My wife teaches in the dreaded private sector, and their third graders at her school every year go to the General Assembly.
Great.
Where they have a sample. They learn what it takes to draft a bill. They are hosted usually by a House representative or a state senator, and then they pass the bill, and it's usually something cute, you know, like more pizza at lunch or something. But they're brought through the process step by step. So as you and I know, or as as my friend Mark and I spoke earlier today, we know how the sausage is made.
Yep.
You know, we may not get to the sub A or the sub B level or the really arcane stuff, but you understand how bills are formulated. That's the third grade level.
That's great.
So when one then gets to high school or to college, you're not challenging something as important as the electoral college and saying, the electoral college is bad because our guy or our gal hasn't won a couple times because the electoral college is wrong. It's screwing people. No, it's not. I find it astonishing that any Rhode Island federal representative would rail against the electoral college when, unique amongst the states, Rhode Island has the most to lose.
Yeah, it's true. It is, and to think, imagine 4 states would control the president for now and forevermore if we lost the electoral college. The founding fathers knew they the document they created is fairly amazing.
Right.
They read the classics in the Greek.
Right.
They read the Bible in the Hebrew. They were very, very educated, and were fleeing something that they knew was going in the wrong direction. And our founder, Roger Williams, was one of the most important men in the formation of our state and our national government.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you just look at the atrocities over time, again, based on what people think, what they think are their presumed rights, yet, again, take the right to bear arms.
Right, very important.
How many people understand? It's interesting because I'm a libertarian, I'm not a Republican. I appeared on WPRO once and to talk about the libertarian movement. And someone called in, they were very angry, very, very angry.
Oh, wow.
And they said, why do we have a Second Amendment? So that an armed citizenry can overthrow a dictatorial government. Oh, you're right, click.
Yes.
That's why we have a Second Amendment. We don't have it for sporting goods. It's nice that that helps that. We don't have it for target shooting. It's nice that it helps that. We have it, and people don't want to hear this because they don't think it can ever happen here.
Yeah, I've heard that over and over again. When I was at the committee that passed Roadmap Rhode Island,
Oof.
and I know, and I actually videoed a lot of it, a lot of the testimony, and I videoed the vote. And when I explained what Roadmap Rhode Island is, and that the UN Agenda 21 logo was on it originally, because I guess they figured no one would know what Agenda 21 was. And I almost all the time I hear, that would never happen here. Well, of course it would happen here if you don't do something about it. Of course it will happen here. Mm-hmm. So, and that is a really scary bill, and I believe that's where they're going. With I believe Agenda 21 is exactly where the plan is taking us, and evidence of that is Agenda 20 is Roadmap Rhode Island, now called Rhode Island Rising. It's scary, and it's every city and town. I live in Barrington, and we are having to deal with it, and trying to figure out how to circumvent it is almost impossible. Mm-hmm. And it's very, very scary, and it is full-blown socialism. Right,
and let's get to property rights. I mean, again, a fundamental, what should be a fundamental assumption in our country. Again, as a libertarian, we take it to, I think it's to where it's supposed to be. I have the right, if I own property, to use it in a manner as I see fit, as long as I aggress no one, as long as I do not use coercion. I have the right to host whomever I want.
Yes.
And yet you've got a nation that clearly continues to expand the role of eminent domain And you've got a nation that continues to expand law enforcement's ability to, to take someone's property. And neither of those should be tolerated. But again, you've got an entire generation of people who think it's okay.
Right.
And it's never okay. Private property is the fundamental key to our society.
It's huge.
And that has to be respected literally at all costs.
I agree with you.
So I mean, you could spend, literally you could have a course every year in civics from the tiniest of tots, once they get to read a little bit, maybe second, third grade, and make it fun and make it kind of lighthearted, but give them sort of an underpinning. And also I think it makes it more attractive for them to become political.
Yes.
Now they can define what ideology they want to pursue, but when it's made more accessible, then it's no longer, oh, there's no way to fight it. If I could collect all the coffee bets that I have on a freaking baseball stadium, all the people told me, why was I wasting our time? Why were the libertarians wasting their time? It's going to get built anyway. And as you drove here, I think one thing absent from the skyline was a baseball stadium, wasn't it?
Yeah.
All right.
I noticed its absence.
That's just my own personal obsession, if you will. Everyone political has got their cause, and mine is crony capitalism. Or I should really say crony corporatism. Other people have other causes. The right to medical privacy. We've got a state where we created a database of prescription medicine being used by people. And it was going to be kept private. And then we had a guy named Kilmartin, who became Attorney General, who after years of trying got a bill passed where there is now a database and it is accessible without the need of a warrant. That's appalling. It's just, on every level, it's wrong. I don't care what your intentions are. And I think ultimately the goal of a civics education is for people to understand that the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah, it's true.
And your good intentions, or conversely, whatever public tragedy happened to have at that moment, should not ever dictate public policy.
And I think that's part of what we're seeing, especially with the Second Amendment. We're seeing that very, very strongly. We have to take away guns. Well, they're for the purpose that you mentioned originally. Mm-hmm. And if we don't study civics, then we're not going to know why the Second Amendment is there. And so therefore, it's very evil. The Founding Fathers were terrible, and better take it out. One of my grandchildren said to me, guns are evil. Why should we have guns? When it was. And so I said, I took this imaginary gun and put it on the table, and I said, okay, that's a gun. Pretend that's a gun, and it's live, and it's ready to go. How many people is that gun going to kill? She said, no one. I said, well, so do guns kill or do people kill? I said, what about, okay, we have knives, that people are using knives, and they're killing with knives. So if we're going to take away guns because they kill people, then we have to take away knives because they kill people. Oh, wait a minute, they're using vehicles. They're using vehicles to just run into people that are standing in any mob. So we have to take away the vehicles. Mm-hmm. And then her response was, well, what about the safety of the children? And I said, well, if I really cared about the safety of the children, and there are thousands and thousands of children being killed because of texting and driving, or just driving and they're not experienced and they run into situations that they can't handle. So if that's the criteria, then I have to take away your phone and your ability to drive a car. So it's like you can coerce people by there's a saying that a man I knew of used to say, the mind cannot tell the difference between truth and that which is vividly and repeatedly imagined. Mm-hmm. So if you want to present something and you want this generation to believe it as absolute truth. You continually, vividly bring that image to them over and over and over again. The government that we have now is evil. It is not based on something you want. There is a much better way. And you repeatedly and vividly give all the reasons why it's such an evil, evil document. And the Founding Fathers were evil. And they had terrible intentions. Christopher Columbus was a horrible person. And keep harping and harping. And you start at kindergarten. You go all the way through college. Then you have a person with a mindset that they believe is absolute reality, and it isn't. So our job now is to say, okay, hold on, time out. Let's take a look. What is this document really like? What is our government like? Let's teach it, and then let's apply it. Do we potentially need changes to the way we're governing? I personally would like to see term limits. You know, I don't quite understand how somebody living in a very expensive area with a fixed income of a representative or senator or even a president can become incredibly wealthy on being a civil servant. That's not what it was all about.
Yeah, a friend of mine has a great way of putting it. He said, civil service and government is supposed to be about people who want to help lives, not get one. My good friend John Fennessy has a great way of talking about inanimate objects that can be used to harm people. As he likes to say, the problem is not possession, the problem is aggression. And the issues begin at aggression, not possession.
And that it begins at the home.
Right.
It kind of comes back to the family.
We've only got literally a couple minutes left. We're actually technically a little over time, but I want to, where is it? So you've submitted the same legislation.
I have.
In 2017.
Yes.
It is submitted to which committee?
I've just submitted it to two senators and 2 reps at this point. So
Okay.
it hasn't been introduced.
So those are your sponsors.
Well, and whoever they,
Right.
it was in the House and the Senate last time. It was introduced bipartisanly, so it wasn't like it was a one-sided.
Right. Is Blake one of your folks behind it, or who is?
He said that he would introduce it. Yes.
All right, great. So good. It's got a chance then. So it is not in committee per se yet.
Right.
It has been presented. It's written. It's ready to roll. Now it's a question of working it through the committee.
Yes.
All right. I hope you will. I mean, I really enjoyed getting the press release today. I thought it was great. I will hope you would keep me apprised of its progress. That's one of those hearings that people need to show up at.
Yes, it is.
It really is. If you're
is.
looking to have some type of generational change against the kind of current madness out there, where people are literally preaching socialism and really don't understand how our government was designed to work, this is the first antidote to start to reverse the problem. You know, it isn't going to happen overnight.
That's right.
We've allowed.
No, that's right.
We've allowed as a society to have these people knowledge deteriorate over an extended period of time, but you have to start somewhere. And I applaud your efforts, because everyone should agree to this. It is a bipartisan issue. If you actually care about government and how it impacts people's lives, regardless of what your political persuasion is,
Exactly.
then you should have the strength and the integrity of your own ideas to know that they should be able to stand up to a generation that's actually trained in civics. And you should not fear knowledge of civics as something that's going to be an attack on your belief system.
That's right.
You should have that. You should be comfortable and confident in that.
Yes, I agree. I totally agree.
Are you guys going to know? How can folks reach out to you or to your organization? I know you've gone through some changes in the last year or so.
Yes.
You've become more of a localized organization. So how can folks reach out to you?
Well, we actually have meetings at the GOP headquarters the second Saturday of every month at 1 o'clock, and we welcome you to come and check out what we stand for. We have some precepts, we call them, that we ask you to agree with 80% of them in order to become part of the group. And then we're doing a number of initiatives. I'm a CPA. I love economics, and so we're looking at where the economy in this state is hurting, which is everywhere, and and the fact that it's incredibly business unfriendly. So we're about to have some initiatives that will help people start businesses, decide on what kind of business form they want, and come alongside and be a help to them, because that's not really happening, and we're losing a lot of the people that graduate now, and people have great ideas, but they don't know how to make them profitable.
All right, we have 4 or 5 of the finest universities on the planet within 10 miles of where we're sitting right now.
That's true.
How is it possible? And we are 50 miles away from arguably one of the hottest economies on the planet in the form of Boston.
Yes.
How is it that we are so broke and so broken?
Taxation, 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 and fees and regulations. There's no better way to muzzle a business and keep it from being successful than to regulate it. Those regulations are intended to keep the businesses down. And if you want to keep the vast middle class down, then you muzzle their ability to be able to build businesses. And they don't have to be huge. As a matter of fact, people don't realize that 85% of the people that work in the United States work for a small business.
Right.
And so people think of, well, the corporation is so evil and it's doing these terrible things, and some of them are, but they're usually the international companies so all the laws are written for the international companies that potentially are, some are wonderful and some are not so wonderful. But the thing is, 85% of our jobs come from the small business environment. So by definition, if you cause these small businesses to be unwelcome, unable to make a profit, unable to hire people, you have destroyed your economy.
And that's what we've done.
And that's what we've done. We have absolutely done that. So we have a number of initiatives that we're doing, not just the civics. We're doing that. We're keeping very careful, trying to be very careful to get the word out. The Rotary Reporter, which is a great thing that Mark Smiley and Mark Zaccaria have put together to be able to get some. So what's happening in the State House? I love the way he does his bunker little skits. And this is what's happening. I'm in this incredibly dangerous zone, and this is what's going on. To make people aware, because quite frankly, the mainstream media is not telling all of the story.
I hear you.
It takes snippets and gives a totally toward a bias. And we want to let's give the rest of the story. Why did something happen? What did really happen? And people need to know that.
And that's why independent media is so important.
It's huge. It's absolutely huge.
And we've run out of time for tonight. I want to thank you so much for coming in. It's really so much help. I know folks can't always do it, but it's so helpful when you're in studio. It's just so much. The give and take is so much more immediate. So much personal.
It's true. Yeah, that's
so please keep us up to date on this.
I will.
Efforts, and we'll do everything we can in our own little way to support them.
Excellent. Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right. So Barbara Holmes, conservative Republican, working diligently to bring back a true understanding of your civil liberties, your rights, your responsibilities, and how exactly our government works, and so that you can understand really how it doesn't work. Folks, we've kept Joe late tonight. First of all, I want to thank folks who tuned in. We ran a little late in getting in here. I want to thank our sponsors, Yacht Club, Air Sciences, Beacon Shipping and Logistics. Without them, the coalition would not exist as we approach our 5th anniversary, incredibly enough. I want to thank the folks at GoLocal Pro for being great hosts. We are the coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting live on the Worldwide Coalition Media Network here at the GoLocal Live Broadcast Center, deep in the heart of the city we love. The rain has stopped. Please come out to Providence. Enjoy any one of a number of fine institutions. As I like to say, there are more ways to sin in Providence than possibly anywhere alive. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio. If you're listening to this the first time, please like and follow our page. CoalitionRadio.us, the mothership. You'll see links there tomorrow now to this and our new podcast page on Spreaker, and of course on the Mighty Mighty Twitter at Coalition_Radio, where we would ask you to follow us there as well. Social media is the linchpin of independent media. It gives us a forum at little or no cost to amplify our message, to kind of duke it out with the big boys. We've got another great show coming next Friday. Thank you very much. I know you have a lot of choices to where you spend your Friday night. We thank you for spending it here. We'll see you next week.